Evening, Bob. I know you've had a heck of a crazy day.
Uh,
Really, really nuts. I could see the sweat on your brow. Just kidding, not really, but glad you were able to make it and welcome everybody to the eighth professional development program. So, Bob, I'll let you take it here.
well, good evening, everybody. And if I look a little frantic, it's because I had a router die just before we went on the air. So I hope everybody can hear me. I hope everybody is doing well. And welcome to the show. And we're glad you're here. So, Rick, kick it off for us, will you please?
All right. So, this is a very, very important thing that we're going to be talking about. It's bringing back lost clients. Okay. And I know this is an issue that all flight schools will have happen from time to time. Either you might not have had an instructor that was completely up to par, you didn't train them well enough on customer service, whatever the scenario was. We're going to try to give you some pointers to bring them back. This is all part of the National Aviation Day coming up this Saturday, and we're using hashtag NAFI says fly again. Okay, we'll have that at the end of the show, but it's very important that we try to reach out and bring back those last clients. All right, so introductions. I'm obviously Rick Todd, NAFI board president, and we have Bob Mater here, the chief. He doesn't have his hat on, so I'm sure nobody recognizes him right now. But we're glad that he was able to come on and we're able to bring this to you together because Bob has different experiences in both independent instruction as well as with a couple different flight schools and same thing with myself. So we're going to jump right into it. So today's guests, we're really happy to have Chris Moser on. Chris is the Director of Flight Training Initiatives at AOPA. He oversees the Rusty Pilots Program and the Flight Training Experience Survey and Awards. And that's new in case anybody has any confusion with that. AOPA rebranded that, so it's now the Flight Training Experience Survey and Awards. He's currently developing programs to support and enhance flight school operations, which makes him very uniquely qualified for tonight. He has 17 years of experience as a classroom teacher, and he was an AOPA aviation technical specialist. And not even I had to ask Chris what that was. And that's those guys that you call up AOPA and say, hey, look, I got this problem. What's this thing about vectors or VORs or something like that? They're able to come up with the answer. And like he says, they had a million different questions, and you really figured out what you didn't know until you worked in that position. So Chris should be an expert at all things by now.
And not only
Um,
that,
he's
not only
he's
that, he's an all-around great guy.
he's an all around great guy. He's a commercial pilot, Gold Seal, CFI, Double I, and MEI,
So
and he is followed by Josh Harnagel, who's with Redbird Flight Simulations. Josh is the vice president of marketing and has authored a few different articles on what we're going to be talking about. You'll see in a minute. He's a commercial pilot. He's a former CFI, double I and MEI, but I'm sure with enough convincing, we'll be able to get him to take the check right again and get back to instructing status. And he's authored Why Students Quit Flight Training and How to Keep Them Flying, and 4 ways to help your flight instructors sign up new customers. Those
those
are two of the articles, among many others. And I'm sure he'll be able to direct anybody that's interested to the Redbird blog that has a wealth of information on it. So, Bob, how do we get them back?
Well, we go out and we grab them by the lapels and say, "Why aren't you flying?" That works every time, doesn't it?
That's right. Douche. Come on, get back in that cockpit.
There you go.
All right. So let's identify the reasons that we need to reach out. Okay. Because they're not going to come back to us on their own. Some might, but most of this is an outreach program. And yeah, do we really have to do it? Yes, we do. It's not the easiest thing to do. Going out and asking, why did you leave? Is there anything I can do? Why don't you come back in for coffee? Anything to kind of bring up that dialogue again. So, according to the article Winning Back Lost Customers, so this was in the Harvard Business Review, there's three reasons to reach out to lost customers. Okay. These are very interesting. So, we have number one, that is, your clients have already demonstrated a need or want for your service. And that makes perfect sense. They've
Yep.
already come in, they've made that commitment once to get in the cockpit. Obviously, they know they like it. So it's in your best interest to try to get them back just for that reason alone. There's interesting statistics that we're going to show you later in the program. Number two, the client is already familiar with your business. Now, this could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. So, obviously, we need to find out exactly why they left and what items we might have to address internally to get them back. And finally, number three, the use of technology has changed. Okay. And we now have more analytics available through social media. So, what do we mean by this? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm Facebook friends with a lot of my customers. I'm also LinkedIn friends if it's a professional basis with a lot of my customers. So I can see their interests. I can see, that customer X was boating last weekend and I too enjoy boating. So, that might be a dialogue outside of aviation that we can talk about. That might be easier to bring them in than just saying, hey, why don't you get back in the cockpit with me? It'll be fun and this and that. And, it might be easier to say, hey, did you see that new boat that Four Winds has out or something like that? And just to spark that conversation again. So that's kind of what we have. But you must pitch the right offer when the time comes, right? You have to have a very specific set of criteria and well thought out plan to get these people back. And that's what
Well,
we're going to offer up to you. Anything else to add, Bob, right now?
yeah, one of the big things that I found with flight instructors, flight schools, we don't like to look at ourselves and say we blew it. Quite bluntly, we need to find ways of getting these folks back. We need to self-assess, determine what the best way to do it is, and be honest with ourselves. It's very, very difficult to ask why did we lose this person. Instead, we tend to blame the customer. Well, they're just not interested anymore. I see that way too often, and I'm sorry. If they showed up in the first place, how did it happen? How did we lose them?
Yeah, and that's a very difficult thing as a business owner in general to do, to admit that there is a problem with your company or something in your company.
Yep.
And this isn't everything, but we do know we identified those items that the first reason students drop out is lack of curriculum. Two and three is family matters and money, and then number four is flight instruction problems, so of some sort.
And
So
well, one thing I'd like to add, and then I'll get out of the way here for a moment, is let's not forget we can't sell anybody a bucket of aviation. We have one thing to sell. It's a service, providing training and providing an excellent experience during that training process. And if customers don't feel that way, hey, you know what? You mentioned boating. There's other things to do out there.
Yep. Yep. And you're absolutely right. We are selling an experience. All right. So what do we have? If the customer left because of price, and these are just some general ideas that they had up in the Harvard Business Review article, give them 6 months free membership dues or the equivalent. Um, most of the clubs and flight schools that I belonged to throughout the years had a monthly fee of some sort, and that covered, the operating expenses, keeping the lights on, things like that. So maybe it would be a sign of good faith to just give them a couple months free. Another idea is if service was the issue, place him with a different instructor and give him a free ground lesson to try that instructor out. Okay. This is really difficult. And I've done this myself. I know, Bob, you have. And it's a tough thing to say, hey, look, I just don't think it's working, but I have another friend or another instructor I can recommend to you, and I think they might do a better job than I am. Okay. Bob, you want to hit on that? Because I know specifically you've recently had that happen, right?
I've had that happen a couple of times where I've had to recommend that someone fly with someone else, not because there was anything wrong with me, at least I hope not, and certainly nothing wrong with the client, but it just wasn't working. You can have two of the best people in the world, or most qualified people in the world, but it's a very intense environment, very intense one-on-one environment. And if it's not a good partnership, it's not a good partnership. Look at how hard um, I'm rereading a book about the Apollo program, and look how hard Deke Slayton had to work to come up with crews that would work well together, and the NASA psychologist. But it comes down to, you're in a small room, plastic or metal box, canvas box perhaps. It's shaking, it's rattling, and you have to have a relationship of trust and comfort with another person, and it works both ways. The student, you have to be comfortable with the student, and the student has to be comfortable with you. And if it's not a good mesh, let's find something that will work.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise, you're just wasting the time that could be spent with somebody that has a better connection or a better way of teaching. And it's not necessarily saying that one is better, but it's better for them. You know, our technique, our teaching technique, might not completely mesh with them very well. You know, they might need a more visual teacher than I'm able to provide. You know, we
Well,
do our
yeah,
best
I'm sorry.
to modify our teaching techniques. I know you do, I do myself. Um, but you know, sometimes it's just difficult, and we want to try to give our customers the best service there is.
Yeah, I tend to be a folksy instructor. Just let's enjoy this and sit back and relax and enjoy the experience. I run into students that want a very discipline. Nah, it's not that I'm not disciplined. I'm hesitant to use hesitant to use that word, but they want a very structured, a very different style of almost. I prefer discuss. I'll do it this way. I prefer discussions versus lecture, and there are people who prefer lecture.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, One of the things on this slide you guys will see that I pointed out was, you know, ground lessons are usually they yield the most profit. Okay. If structured right. Okay. So that's why we said, well, you know, why don't you try a ground lesson? It's also a less threatening environment than jumping in the airplane. Of course, if you have a simulator, I'm sure Josh would be very pleased to tell you how much advantage would be if you used a simulator in your ground training. So I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit. So here's an interesting fact here. Customers who canceled, and I don't know if you've read this one yet, Bob, but customers who canceled because of price are more likely to come back than those who left because of poor service. All right. And people who cited both reasons for quitting are the least likely to return. So if it's price and poor service, forget it. You ain't going to get them back. But if it's price, they're more likely to come back. So you might be able to do something like offer up that discount on the membership or something like that. Now here's the next slide is even better here. So researchers expected, as I would too, that consumers who bolted once would depart quickly during their second turn. And what they found out after this review was that was not the fact. In fact, the clients generally stayed longer the second time. One, because they're already familiar with the environment and what to expect. And two, they might be in a better place financially or even, you know, family wise to offer something else. So the clients who defected because of price behavior, which is suggested of like the fickle deal seekers, you know, the guys that are sitting and watching on Groupon and stuff like that. Um, they ended up staying the longest of all. So it's really kind of interesting how that demographic is. So keep that in mind as you're structuring your programs for getting these people back. Now, let's say you find out your clients had a bad experience with customer service.
Well, that
Okay.
That
Yeah, it never happens. It never happens at all. I love this graphic too, by the way. So it's just fun. Um, be calm and understanding. Now, these are all counterintuitive to human nature, right? Because all of a sudden somebody comes up to me and says, "Oh, your flight in school is so bad. I had just the worst experience. Your instructor didn't know anything, and this and that." And wow, boy, does that get you riled up. But you have to calm yourself down and try to think through in a much more subdued fashion. Okay, do the unexpected. What do we mean by that? Apologize, empathize, and fix it. Okay, apologize, empathize, and fix it. I'd say there'd be a quiz later, but we don't have it developed yet. But those are the key factors you need to remember for that. So apologize to them, find out, say, "Man, I am sincerely sorry that this happened, and here's what I can do to fix it. I'll give you a free lesson. I'm going to give you the lesson. So let's go get in the airplane. We'll go and do one together, okay?" Or something like that. Maybe give them a senior person. Solicit the customer's recommended actions. So don't be afraid to ask the customer what they think would be fair. Okay, especially if it's a service issue, and make it right, and then some. So if they say, "Okay, I'll come back. Yeah, you convinced me because you're going to fly," um, and then I come back with say, "Okay, that's great. Let's go fly, and afterwards we'll do a real thorough debrief. And hey, how about I buy you dinner or something like that, just to kind of continue the conversation, non-threatening environment." And here's another thing that I put out there was recommend a competitor. Now, this is very interesting. Now, Bob's heard me say this before. I think of myself as a general practitioner, right? I'm good. I'm good with getting the ratings and things like that. But I don't go to my general practitioner for heart surgery, right? So why would a student come to me if they want to go and do some really in-depth spin training or aerobatic work or something like that? Um, Now, so spin training is interesting. I think everybody should do it, especially students. Uh, I happen to have a aerobatic flying club that's nearby that the students can go to and literally go up and do some really serious spins and extra 300 and a super decathlon. Um, those spins aren't going to be the same as if we really take the Cessna up and forcibly hold cross corrective controls and kind of do a little spin. So, utilize those assets. If you can't fulfill a customer because of that, or like that circumstance, if you find a niche that somebody else could have better or do better, then by all means recommend it to them.
absolutely. And think about going back to if there's been a service issue. We've all been to let's get away from aviation for a minute. We've all been to a restaurant where something wasn't right. We've said, the soup was cold. And all of a sudden the whole meal is copped. And you weren't doing that. You just wanted a warm bowl of soup. You weren't trying to get a free meal out of the deal. Do you think you're going to go back to that restaurant? I would. I
Yep.
have. We've all done it. And it's always delight the customer. And these are I'm going to agree with John and Martha King, for example. I think it is time to make sure we stop saying student pilot. I think it is time to say the customer because these are customers. Yes, we're the authorities. We're the ones responsible for the flight training, but they're buying that commodity from us, and we owe it to them to manage the experience. And one more thing, and this may be covered later, but what by Chris or Josh, find a way of getting them to say thank you for no. Sometimes the best customer service in the world is no. No, we're not going to do that. Or no, you did not do a good job today. But find a way to make it palatable, exciting, and say, wow, I'm glad you said that. And there are ways to do that. It's not easy, but there are ways to do it.
Yeah, and actually, it's another good point, Bob, that you brought up. And as a flight school owner, it's really difficult, especially if your schedule is extremely packed and you can't service that customer 100%. You owe it to that customer to recommend them to another school where they can be serviced 100%. It's really difficult, but and I've had to do that in my mainstream business, but it will, those people will remember that. And, maybe for their instrument rating, they might come back to you, when you have more instructors or something. So don't be afraid to do that. It's a good thing to be busy.
That's right.
All right. And finally, to wrap this part up, nobody raves about average customer service. Okay. So fix it.
Absolutely. And don't be, well, you're bringing it up.
Yep.
How do we
So
do that?
how do the pros do it? And on that, we're going to ask Chris. So, Bob, if I know you're going to talk to Josh later, we're going to get Chris on. Hey, Chris, there you are. Chris
Hey, Rick.
Moser, everyone from AOPA.
Hey,
And
Rick,
he's
thanks for having me.
oh the pleasure's mine, really. And we're going to be talking about a couple things that Chris has found out about a little company that was on the AOPA honor roll, Nashville flight training. So, Chris, let's go ahead and talk about it. You have the controls, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click. Here we go. So one of the really cool things that I was able to do when you gave me a call, Rick, is I immediately thought of Chris Erlinson down at Nashville Flight Training. They are one of our honor roll winners in the Flight Training Excellence Awards. As you mentioned, we've renamed those this year. And so he's a really good example of someone who has done a great job with promotion and social media, but also just in his interactions with people. He's really good with people, and that's what made me think of him. And so I had a great conversation with him. So I wanted to share some of those topics with you as we go through.
Absolutely.
All right. So the first thing that I really want to talk about, and this is a lesson I know that I learned as when I first started instructing full time at a school. It's like my background is as a teacher. I'd been teaching before I did that. And when I got to the school and started teaching full time, I was fortunate to have a chief CFI named Jim Pittman out in Arizona. And one of the things that he told us, he actually really started working on us on customer service, and he even got us Greg Brown's Savvy CFI book, because Greg I was in Phoenix and he's up in Flagstaff. So
Yeah.
he had him come down and talk to us and started telling us all this. And so the big thing that I learned was that unlike teaching in school, flight training is a people business. So we think of people as, or we call them student pilots all the time. But the big thing here is to really think of them as clients, because if you think a student, I think you could really think of it along the lines of, well, oh, they have to be here. It's like for me as students in my classroom, like I taught social studies, you had to be there. But with our flight training, they don't, as Bob mentioned too, like they can go and get a boat. So flight training really is a people business. And that's one thing we need to remind ourselves. So I really worked hard, not that I'm great at it yet, but I really try to think to myself when I talked about the people that I'm training is they are my clients. They're my customers. They're not, even though they're a student, they're something a little different than that we want to make sure they keep coming back. So we've really got to think about flight training is a people business. And this is something that I've noticed in some of the research that I've done. I know Chris mentioned it and you've mentioned it, is that we got to think about people. So I know that I've read stuff by Disney, who's really great at customer service. I've read other articles. I've talked to a lot of folks. And the common theme that keeps coming down is you got to take care of the people. And some of the things you said, Rick, too, about making sure that we're doing a good job with our instructing, making sure that we're providing them the service that they want. It's things like making sure it's a positive experience every time. And I know one of the things we talk about in the Excellence Awards and the research of the flight training experience is all about making sure that we're transparent, making sure that we let them know where they are. It's so easy for us to get in that mindset as an instructor of we're flying airplanes and this is what I do, I teach airplanes, to forget about the fact that we're teaching people, and that's got to be the main focus. And especially for people that are new, that
Yeah.
we got to take care of them. So if we do that, I know Chris said when I spoke with him as well that the flight training will take care of itself. You make sure you take care of the folks.
Right.
All right. So one of the things that we can do is make sure whether it's with a client that we currently have to retain them, or whether it's a client, as I know the focus of this webinar is about, of getting the folks to come back that were with us before and have left for some reason, is to give them a call and check in. In fact, I had, when this story got out and some of the ambassadors at AOPA heard about it from, getting it from the NAFI email that went out for marketing, Jamie Beckett, our Florida ambassador, contacted me and he wrote me and said, hey, I got this story that happened to me when I first started instructing, and I really thought it was appropriate. And when he shared it with me, I was like, you were right on, Jamie. And this is basically what it was. Jamie was a brand new CFI. He started working at a school down, it was up in Connecticut, actually, in Meriden, Connecticut, Meriden Aviation. And when he got in there, he kind of rolled in and said, hey, I'm an instructor. I'm ready to start working. And the gentleman that owned it had been serving in the Middle East for a time. And so actually the guy that had owned it. And so the business had kind of been let down a little bit. So when the new chief instructor, this guy, Frank, spoke with Jamie, he said, all right, first day, we're gonna fly together. We talked a little bit, talked about the syllabus. Okay, now here's your first duty. He went and he showed him this big file drawer full of records that they had of people that had dropped out. He says, here's a phone. Here are people that used to be here. Start calling. And so and so Jamie told me that, here he is in this old World War II era office calling people that he used to instruct and said, hey, I'm into CFI. I'm here at Meriden Aviation, and I'd love to have you come back in and invite you to come back in. He said by the end of that week, he already had 5 full-time students, was working his butt off, and had more people waiting to come in. And all he had to do was make that call to reach out to them. So the biggest thing is give them a call, the folks that haven't been flying, and you'd be surprised how many, they did it for some reason. They had that love and that invite, whether it was because, and I know Greg Brown talks about this too, whether it's because maybe they were having a hard time with landings or whatever it may be, the fact of an instructor calling them and inviting them back in, it's like they may have been thinking to themselves, man, I can't do this, or, if this was tough and I was having a hard time. But if the instructor, this professional, is calling me and inviting me to come back in, I must be doing okay, because why would they call me? So I really thought that was a great story that Jamie shared. And it really is true, not only for inviting old students back in, but once you get them back in, keeping them there. And so
Yeah.
if you see for some reason that they are dropping off or they're not scheduling, it's that call. Give them a call, check it in. And it could just be like, hey, just, we haven't seen you on the schedule in a week or so. Just wanted to see how things are going. And, just make sure everything's okay. And in fact, Chris shared a story with me that, they do that. They really are good about that. And one time they called this guy, wasn't on the schedule, been a couple of weeks. And hey, we just wanted to call and check in and see how it's going. And I think they even sent him a card. And it turned out the guy had been in an accident, in a car accident. It was in the hospital. And so then they were like, oh, they're really blown away. So they've all signed a card for him and said, hey, we really hope you're doing okay, and we're just thinking about you. They said once he got everything settled, he was back, loyal customer, and kept flying with them. So it's that little bit about just taking that little bit to step out and ask.
Yeah, part of the thing that I think people are afraid of, I don't think, I know, it's in our nature to avoid things that will disappoint us, right? So we try to avoid rejection and things like that as much as possible. But yet, after you get past that, on the other side is that reward of the people that want to come back. So you have to just kind of overcome that feeling and say, you know what? I'm going to be rejected from time to time. And it's just how you handle it. Just think about the end goal and getting those people back.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Rick, you saying that reminded me, I got to speak with some guys up at Ventura Flight Training up in Farmingdale, New York a few years back. I went up to visit them. And one of the things that really blew me away, that here was a school that had been dying, was part of a larger charter operation, maintenance operation. And so the son, Nick, came back and he told his dad, he said, look, it's like, you're going to shut the thing down. How about you let me take it over and we'll see what we can do. And so they basically hired a guy to come in to be his manager and said, look, we got 6 months. If we don't turn this thing around, we're not going to have a school. And so one of the things he really told me that he learned was asking the customer at the end of every lesson, not just what do we do wrong, what do we need to fix? He said, what can we do better? Because even if you're running at 95%, we want to get to 96%. And he said that, at first they were afraid to ask the question, what can we do better? Because they knew what the answer was going to be and they didn't want to hear it. And so that fear, again, of asking the question of potentially getting feedback you don't want it's something you got to try to do. And in fact, it helps you to learn to become even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So along the lines of doing the call to check in, the other thing to do is it's like, how do I do that? So it could just be, hey, I'm calling to check in to see how things are going. If you notice that something, you can kind of tell like something's not quite right, or maybe you can kind of just feel something. It could be something that they were afraid to potentially ask their CFI about, or to tell their CFI about. So it's, if you get that feeling, ask them straight up. Hey, you know what? We really feel like maybe we let you down somehow. Can you tell me about that? Is there something that we can do? And if they do share something with you, maybe it was, I had a bad experience with an instructor, or you hear the common thing, I had 3 instructors and the 3rd instructor was gone all the time, was out flying charter or whatever. It's like, how can we make it right then? And then, just like you said, Rick, too, in that research, ask about it. What can we do? And then fix it. Do something to make it right.
Yep.
So that fits right along with what the points we were talking here.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing I thought about all this was a lot of this is very similar or mirrors what you talked about, but it coming from all these different sources, we're hearing the same thing. As a social studies teacher, I always taught, if all the sources from different places are saying the same thing, it's probably some truth in there.
And the interesting thing, Chris, a lot of those figures, that was from a cable company study that was done. So yeah, really interesting. And you could see how once I read that, and I was like, this is exactly what we need in our industry as well. So, and when you think about it, it's a service industry, right? They have a product, it's a service. We don't have to have cable. We could have satellite or something else. So very interesting, the synergies for that. Yeah,
absolutely. And in fact, I know it's the exact right attitude that I was talking about too, is that you got to remember, these are our clients, they're our customers. They don't have to come do this. So we want to make sure we take care of them. So if you do find that, they've dropped out for whatever reason and they might be interested, offer them something like you said. And I know Chris mentioned specifically, he offers a free lesson. If you come back, we will give you a free hour of flight training, or whatever the normal flight lesson may be. And you might think that's going to be expensive. That might cost you, $150 as a flight school owner. He said, if you add to ask me the question, he said, think of it in this business terms too. It's like giving away a free lesson. That's crazy. But he said, if I offered you a deal, if I give you $185, would you give me 10,000 in return? That's a deal I'm going to take. Right. So it's the same idea. It's like I give away that free lesson, but if I get a loyal customer back out of it, I'm going to get someone who's going to finish that certificate, maybe come back and do additional rating certificates and rent. And so on. So it's a good deal. So it's a good thing to do it. And it's a great chance to get a loyal customer. And as he mentioned, it's worth way more than the cost of the flight. All right, click by accident. So one of the things he really mentioned too is that with that people thing, and that's the thing, like I said, that Chris was so good at, and the people that when you go to a good customer service place, they really do care about you, or they at least show they're caring. He said, people don't care unless they know how much you care. And that's the part about reaching out, like that experience that he had with the gentleman they reached out to and had been in a car accident. He said, they'll give a call, they'll check in, they'll get to know the names of their kids or their family, and just, how are the kids doing? How's Johnny doing? And that really goes a long way too. It's something I know that you might see in, salesmen doing, or the networking thing. But if you really do it in the genuine fashion to find out more about the folks that you're working with, and that are your customers, that goes a long way to having somebody become a loyal customer. So that little personal touch, and it could just be sending out emails or sending out like some sort of holiday thing or whatever, happy birthday, finding out when their birthday is and saying, hey, it's your birthday, we got a special deal. If it's like a special thing, don't forget, even if they're already training with you, come in for your birthday and we'll give you a free, whatever it is, a free cap or something like that. It just shows them that little something extra that you do care about them as a person too. And then again, so that idea that, to reiterate too, care about your customers and make sure you show it. So really do reach out, make that personal part. One of the things I was rereading some of the Savvy CFI, and there was a point in there that I had forgotten. Actually, it's the new edition too, that Greg Brown had just put out. And what I thought was interesting here too is he said, I mentioned before, sometimes our customers, our clients, are a little hesitant. They may not want to say something to us as CFIs while they're working with us, because we really do. We create a bond. We're working so closely with the people that they do become friends. And he said the key thing to do is make sure somebody in your flight training organization, whether it's a manager or the chief CFI, or maybe it's a check airman, whatever it may be, make sure that someone is there that they know personally too, that takes an interest in them, so that they can feel comfortable going and speaking with them. So that's another way of showing, you care about your customers, even making it part of the process that person will check in with them. Maybe it's before solo, at various milestones along the way, just to see how things are going. So it's not even just the flight training check on the quality of the training, but just checking, how are we doing? You know, what can we do better for you? Is everything going well? And that way they can express those and feel comfortable talking about whatever the issue may be, so that you have a chance to fix it.
Right. Absolutely.
So then the question I know that we go to is, then how do we retain people once we have them? And there are some simple things. One of the fun things with talking to Chris down at National Flight Training is, you know, he says, "Hey, this," and I know even some of the other guys I speak to too. This ain't rocket science. It's like, this stuff is not magic. And the same thing we see in the flight training experience awards is that the people that are doing it well, it's not like created or invented anything. All that they've done is they look at these customer service aspects and they execute on them. They make sure that they take care. One of the first things is answer the phone. I don't know if any of you've had the experience, but I know that we will call, and I go and I like to try to visit. If I'm in an airport, I'll walk in to see what the school's about. And I've walked in on schools where you walk in the place and there's nobody there. There's literally no one there on a Saturday or whatever it may be. And it's kind of like, you got to be there. So when somebody calls, there's so much business that you could potentially lose just by not having someone to answer the phone. So take that investment, have someone that will answer the phone. And if for whatever reason they have to leave a message, call them back right away. Don't put it off for a week or a couple of days, even call them back immediately. But even better, try to have someone there to answer the phone. Have somebody at the front desk. So when they walk in, there's someone to welcome them. And and this person knows how to speak to a customer too, so that it's not, don't rattle off things like it's a Cessna 172 and it's got, it's 2,550 pounds of mag. People don't know what that is. So make sure that they know how to speak to someone in that sort of non-aviation in a way that makes them feel comfortable, and so they don't feel funny asking questions.
Right.
The other part being that Chris really made a big deal about was return every email. So if someone does email you, and I know that that's something that I like to do, it's like sometimes you have a fear of, maybe I don't want to call because I just want to get some information. I don't want to get a sales pitch. So if someone emails you, get on that. They are your customers. These are potential people, whether it's new customers coming in, or whether somebody emailed you in response, a customer that maybe used to be with you, but emailed you in response to something you sent out. So take really good care about that, and respond to those emails right away. And it's a great way sending out emails. I know I really enjoy some of the stuff you might see, some bold method. I'll see a cool article, or
Yeah.
things. I know that the guys from Pilot Workshops, they'll do something where they'll have an interesting tip. And so I'll say, that's a really good one. That's something that I talked to, that I learned from. Like, one was, why do engine fires start during startup? And there was an article that talked about the fact that it's usually from over priming. But just the way that the article described it, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I learned something from that. And so then I send that on to the people that I'm working with, or the people that I have worked with. And so that way, that's a good way to keep that contact going, so they know that you're still thinking about them.
Yeah, one company that I talked to for marketing and stuff said, always keep yourself in front of the customer, whether it's not physical, but it might just be a text message like, "Hey, did you read about this new reg?" or "Did you see this article?" Just like you said, and just kind of push it over to them, and that way it'll spark some future conversation with you too, and kind of make it soft when you get right back into the cockpit with them.
Right. And I remember reading too, I'll put a shameless plug in for AOPA, but of course, like the Free Flight Training magazine, I used to love getting those when I was instructing full time. That little, we had the card you can fill out, you can go to the website. And so that's a great way. I like to share it because I thought it was great articles. And in doing the research and things, that what I found is, in addition to that, it's a way to keep aviation back in front of them. So I know that I was rusty for a few years myself. And when we talk to rusty pilots or people that have dropped out, they never say, I don't want to be a pilot. It's never that. It's like, or I don't want to fly again. They always think, I really want to do that. And that's a way to sort of keep it in front. It keeps teasing them. So they keep thinking about, well, maybe I could get back out and do that. So the
Exactly.
emails is like what you said, is keeping yourself in front of them. So use whatever it may be to keep that contact coming. One of the key things to do is, once you've got somebody, is at the end of every lesson, schedule the next lesson. How easy is it as instructors, where we have it, somebody says, you finish the lesson, you've done the post-flight brief, and you've talked a little about, here's where we want to go next. And you say, hey, by the way, you didn't check the schedule. And so you don't see what's coming next. So schedule that lesson. I know I used to do it before I really started thinking about it. Was I didn't worry about that. They'll call back. They'll schedule when they're ready. No, what Chris says is, you need to get on there. And he said, when they started proactively having instructors scheduling that next lesson, they saw a 30% increase in their business. And so it's more of a deal where it's don't let them get out the door, not in a bad way, not in a high pressure way, but just suggest to them a time. It's like, hey, when are you on the schedule next? Am I going to see you on Wednesday? And they say, oh, I got some things going on. I'll tell you what, I'm available. Does Friday work for you at this time? Find out when it's convenient for them and get them on the schedule. Because that way you can give them a call and just give that little reminder. It's like, hey, don't forget, I'm literally looking forward to flying with you tomorrow. And here's our homework. Or maybe you send them an email. And if it really isn't possible, if something came up, if they really can't schedule that next flight, be proactive, make the call to reach out to them so that you can get them back on the schedule, and remind them, hey, we haven't seen you. I know you said we call you in about a week. So let's get that done. Let's go ahead and get you on the schedule because we're looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, and I would add to that, have reasonable cancellation fees if that is a method you would want to do. Where obviously those slots are precious, and especially if you're fully loaded on that schedule, you want to be proactive. So on that, offer up reminders, like you said, maybe a quick text message or something. Hey, see you tomorrow at 5 or whatever it is, just to double check and make sure. And that'll help kind of fill your schedule. You want to maximize the business. You want to maximize profits and everything because, well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we are in business, and this is a fun business to be in. But you need to be reasonable with your expectations for that.
And I'm trying to remember, I don't know if it was Chris that I was speaking with, and I know that we've been toying with promoting this idea in the stuff that we're doing with the flight training initiative. But using that same call that you just talked about, how many times do we hear CFIs complain about, oh, the customer didn't do their homework? They came in, it's like they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So like I said, I'm trying to remember if it was Chris. I just can't remember exactly. But the idea was when you call them and say, hey, really looking forward to that flight lesson tomorrow. And hey, by the way, how's that lesson going on the cross-country planning? Do you have any questions about that? So that's a way too of letting them know I remembered the homework and I'm looking for you to do that for the next day or whatever it might be. And it's going to give them that little motivation where it's like, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm going to get on that. And it might give them a little bit of extra so they don't forget. They'll know, oh, I'm on it, don't worry. And if you make a habit of it, they'll know, oh, it's Chris calling again. Oh, I'm on the homework. I've got it. I'm working on it. So
yeah, it helps them hold themselves accountable.
Exactly. And it lets them know that you're thinking about it too, that it is important. And I know the last point on this part about keeping people and retaining them, whoops, went a little too far forward there, is that a really cool way, this was something that Chris has like I said, Chris Erlinson has a really thing that he loves to share, which is basically, I know a good idea when I steal one. And so this is one that he had gone down to visit Paragon Flight, who was our best flight school a couple of years back, and then won the President's Award the year after that. And so he had gone down to visit them knowing like, hey, these guys obviously are doing something right. Their customers really like them. And he said one of the things he picked up was during the introductory process, or when they're coming back even too, find out what's a place that they would like to go. What's really interesting them in drawing them to want to fly. It's probably a destination. It could be a place where they really want to go to some great restaurant or they really like to eat. It could be maybe they want to go to the beach, and then make that a goal during their training. So customize part of that cross-country training to a location where they want to go. So if they really want to go, like, I want to get a place up in the mountains, find where that local airport is and make that. So, okay, when we get to your cross-country training, this is going to be where we go. You're going to do maybe it's one of our big cross countries. When we go there, you're gonna plan the flight and we're gonna go there. Or maybe if it's not something you're worried, it's that you feel comfortable sending it to, it could even be one of the ones where you send them on a solo cross country too. So make that's really a way to keep motivating them, saying, hey, don't, by the way, we're gonna be planning that trip. Don't forget, we're gonna be heading you up there. And so they use that as a way to keep people motivated because it reminds them why they got into it in the first place.
Absolutely. All right. And I think the next thing is we're going to continue talking about client retention with Josh. So thank you very much, Chris. We'll probably, yep, that's okay. You can shut off now and we'll catch you back for our Q&A session. And Bob is going to be running the questions and talk with Josh. So I'm going to go ahead and step off, Bob and Josh, and you guys have the flight controls, okay?
All right, Josh, I believe you've got the flight controls. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, Bob. Thanks for having me.
How are things down there in beautiful Texas?
Warm, but it's a beautiful evening. But yeah, very warm.
Well, glad to have you. So we want to talk about the best ways of hanging on to customers, and I'm gonna let you kick it off here. I've got a few thoughts of my own, of course, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So, as we mentioned in the introduction, I'm now the VP of marketing for Redbird. So I kind of approach a lot of this stuff from a marketing and sales perspective. And one of the things that I really wanted to kind of add into this discussion about your customers is when we look at what flight training is, what the product you're really selling, at the end of the day, you're selling an aspirational product for most of your customers. Either they want to learn to fly because it's a lifetime goal of theirs, they want to learn to fly because it's a career that they're pursuing greatly. In fact, it actually shares a lot in common with something like weight loss in terms of a similar product that and the way we think about how we present the product to the customer. It's something about making their life better. There's some reason they think flying is going to improve their life or create some actualizing moment for them. And this has a lot of impacts in how we approach delivering the training, how we approach talking about the training to the student. And one of the interesting facts that'll show up in this is if you look at trends for uh, Google searches, flight training always spikes around New Year's, and that's because it's a New Year's resolution. People always say, "I want to learn to fly this year." It almost mirrors exactly weight loss searches. So again, it's a thing to think about. And with that in mind, when you're talking about aspirational products, you really want to have a end goal in mind. What's the goal? What's the point of this product you're offering? And in the case of flight training, it's typically a rating, a license, a certificate, or some level of proficiency. And the best way to um, ensure that you get that is with a syllabus. There's got to be some structure to the training, so that there's a clear progression of how someone goes from where they are now to where they want to be. And this comes from an AOPA survey. In fact, all this data comes from AOPA for the most part. But one of the number one way to have a student um, become dissatisfied with the training outside of maybe a customer service issue, at least in mass terms, is to feel like they don't have a clear progression, a clear step forward. And that can be that there's two parts of that. One, there's got to be a plan to begin with. There's got to be a syllabus to begin with. And two, that syllabus has got to be communicated in a way that the student can understand. I've spent a lot of time looking at Part 141 TCOs, and if you gave that to somebody who had never been in an airplane and said, "This is how you're going to learn to fly," they would go cross-eyed before they get to page 4. So there's probably value in creating a document out of your TCO that says, "This is exactly what you're going to do." In layman's terms, without being overly technical about it. The next item that always comes up is going to be cost. Those are the two questions you're going to get, both in terms of new students and probably students that are coming back into flight training or progressing to a new certificate, is how long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost? And I think if anybody is actively pursuing flight training, we tend to be really scared, or at least a lot of instructors tend to be really scared to give them an honest answer in terms of cost. I think it's it's more beneficial to the customer. It's a better way to run your business to be upfront about it and say it's going to be $12,000, $15,000, $5,000, whatever it is, to be upfront about it and say this is likely what the cost is going to be. Obviously, there's some variation in there, but you should plan on spending this much. And I think it's really important that we do that, because then if you tell them $7,000, by the time they get to $10,000, they're unhappy. It doesn't matter how good the training is; they're going to be unhappy about it. And then again, one of the learnings from the AOPA study done a number of years ago is that the lack of clarity or communication essentially from the flight school and from their instructor as to where they go from here and how they get to their goals.
Let me come back to something here. This all ties together. Cost ties to clarity and goals and making sure everybody knows what's going on. one thing that that in my mainstream job, to borrow Rick's phrase, is every 2 weeks I have to sit down with my boss and say, "This is where I'm at. This is what I've done. This is where I'm going." And then he modifies the goals on the fly. We adjust, we assess and adjust as we go along. And we owe that to our students. I mean, nobody likes stumbling around in the dark. Uh, and then on the quotes part, when people ask me what it costs to flight train, I throw everything in. It is it's goulash, it's ratatouille, it's whatever you want to call it. It is everything. I throw in the cost of the DPE, the medical exam, books, what I think headphones will cost, whether they want to go high end, low end on headphones, everything, and say, this is what you should expect to lay out. And because I'd rather have them pleasantly surprised at the back end than have them look at you and say, another $2,000? Where'd that come?
Certainly. So the next major sort of finding that I would bring to people's attention when we're talking about how to create a system that both attracts and retains students is the use of milestones and creating checkpoints along the way to motivate. One of the most, obviously as an instructor, one of the best feelings or experiences you can have is signing somebody up for their first solo. It's, nerve wracking. I spent plenty of time sitting at the end of a runway with a radio in my hand, very nervous about a solo, even though I had faith in the student. But I obviously still remember my first solo. It's that kind of moment that it will be ingrained in that person forever. And the more that you can create those situations, especially when you're talking about a product that is aspirational in nature, you're not buying cell phone service because you need cell phone service. You're buying an achievement, something that either this is the career, the lifestyle that you envision for yourself, or it's proving that you can do it. Whatever the core motivation happens to be, creating those events that reinforce that can have a huge impact. And I think it's probably reasonable when we talk about flight training. I know this is probably hearsay in front of some instructors, but we should probably think about creating a course for our students that is just solo, because there are plenty of people out there that they just want to fly an airplane by themselves. They want to get that experience. They want to achieve that. That money is valid. That experience and that desire is valid. The market has a demand for it. So there may be an opportunity there, and that can be a milestone for some people. Now, I think if you looked at the training record of a lot of flight schools, you'd see a precipitous drop off after that first solo in terms of the students that we lose. And those are great, obviously, targets to come to bring them back into the flight school. But we need to think about that as well. What's the next milestone after that first solo that we can give them that might motivate them to stay in the course a little bit longer? Giving positive feedback and giving encouragement when things are tough. There's a shameless plug, but Redbird has its own blog called Redbird Landing. And there's a number of articles on there that are written for flight instructors, for flight school owners. Our target is not really the student. The target is the instructor and the owner of the flight school, operator of the flight school. And we have a very good article written by an author named Serena Houston, who's an instructor, that talks about the value of struggling in your flight training. And if there was no struggle, there's there's less learning that happens, and B, there's less of a sense of achievement when you finally overcome that. And I think it's important as we're doing that training, when we notice students struggling, that the instructor really takes that mentor role and becomes less about procedures and switches here, switches there, and a little bit more about psychology and getting the student to understand that this struggle is valid, important. There's nothing that, they're not less of a pilot or a person for having it. But it's something that they need to go through, and the instructor is there to help them through it. And that on the other side, there's a big reward. There's a big milestone that can be achieved. Do you have anything to add to that, Bob?
just going back to the, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just what you were saying. The I think this all boils down to empathy. We can't be distant from our customers. We've been there. We've been down this road before. We've been out ahead of them, and it's okay to empathize with them. I'm not saying sympathize. There's a big difference between the two. Sympathizing is sometimes an enabling thing, but we empathize with them and say, yep, I used to flare the airplane 20 feet in the air too. And I had to figure it out. And by the way, that's true in my case. I had a good instructor who helped me through that. And we'll sort it out. In the meantime, I'll make sure we don't hurt ourselves and hurt the airplane. Using that as a small example, it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with the student, and there's nothing wrong with showing that you've been there, done that.
When people ask me why I like to fly, and I'm a third generation pilot and flight instructor, grew up flying, and it wasn't until I got away from flying, went to college, that it really became something I wanted to do. And I really want to fly because it's a difficult thing that I can do well. That's the motivating factor for me, outside of all the romance of it and the utility of it, and for a while my profession. At the end of the day, it's a difficult thing that can be done well, and that appeals to a certain person. And I think that if there was no difficulty, we would have a far less compelling product. So let's see what the next one is here. So this, talking about our students and how we adjust our training to them once they're in the course. So obviously you have a plan, you have a syllabus, you have a TCO, whatever you want to call it, that outlines what happens, but every student is different, and very good instructors recognize that difference, and really good instructors can recognize it early, and they modify how they're delivering training, how they phrase things, how they present different topics based on that person. And it's personality differences, there could be gender differences, cultural differences, whatever it may be, that in how you deliver that training. Not saying that anyone is incapable, that those differences might make them incapable of learning it. It's just that how we present that training to them might be very different. I'm sure Chris can talk about this from his classroom experience, but there's different types of learners, visual learners, audio learners, all those sorts of things. And we can go back into fundamentals of instruction if we crack open that joy of a textbook. And but at the end of the day, there's some intuition and, like you say, empathy that goes into how we deliver and customize our training to meet our students' needs.
Absolutely. And an engineering student is going to learn a lot differently than an English major. And you know what? They're both smart and they can both fly.
Yep, absolutely. And now, again, total shameless plug. One of the advantages that you can, having simulation or tools in your classroom or in your flight school that allow you to do things, is you can allow a student to experience those milestones, those difficulties, in a way that's very constructive and drives towards the goal, versus saying, well, the next thing we need to do is your solo cross country, but it's going to be basically a month and a half before we have weather to do that. You can do that solo cross country in the simulator first. You can try different things to keep them engaged and keep them moving through the program. Okay. Okay, so how about sales? Move that through. See, we're kind of running right at the end of an hour, so I'm going to go a little quickly through this because Chris did such a great job of covering this stuff. Because when Chris talks about customer service, right here is good sales. Because at the end of the day, we are not selling cell phones to kids in the mall. We're selling a product that if someone wants to fly, there's not a whole lot we have to do to convince them to do it, right? They are excited about it. They want to do it. It's more about choosing a specific location and getting a sense of how they can get from where they are to where they want to be. And the real key to this, I think, is if you are in the flight training business for long enough, you'll run into instructors that naturally have a good sales sense, and it's because they really have empathy and they have good customer service. They can interact with people. They care. They actually care about their customers. If you want your business to grow and continue to remain profitable, you actually have to create a system around that. You can't rely on individual instructors just showing up randomly and having those skill sets. And so one of the things that as the school, what we really need to do is give our instructors training tools, motivation, or incentives, however you want to put it, to sell, to provide good service, to really create a culture of the customer comes first. And when somebody walks in the door, they are a customer. We just haven't we haven't completed the transaction yet, but the first time they walk in the door, they're a customer, and it's our job to get to that transaction and to create systems or processes that support that for your instructors. And that's really a management function. You got to separate some time. You could be a busy chief flight instructor with a full schedule, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to separate a little bit of time to work on your business, not in your business. And this is one of those things that I think is very key for a management function to do, is create incentives and tools for your instructors to learn these skill sets.
I love that phrase, work on your business rather than in your business. Get out of does a goldfish really know what water is?
Right.
So, exactly. And try to get outside, try to look at it objectively, try to find out what the customers want. And sometimes you have to be willing to take a little bit of pain with that.
Yes. Yeah. And it might, one of the things that, so the place where I was an instructor, full-time instructor, was Aviation Adventures, also a frequent recipient of AOPA's awards in Manassas, Virginia. And Bob is a good friend of mine, actually introduced me to my wife. And Bob really did a good job of, he was a Cessna Pilot Center at the time, and selling CPC kits was important to him, both in terms of revenue and also that was basically signifying a new student start.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you that are familiar with that program, when you sell a Cessna Pilot Center kit, the flight school makes some money on that deal. They buy them wholesale, they sell them retail. There's a little bit of a cut that the flight school makes, which is good. Bob would pass that cut on to the instructor or any employee that happened to make that sale, and he would forego profit on that item to pass it along to the instructor. So again, to I think Rick's point, would you be willing to trade $100 for $10,000? Yeah, you would. But for an instructor who's struggling to make it, a new instructor who's struggling to make it, that $300 or $400 a month can be a big deal, and it's an immediate incentive to really bring somebody into the program, bring somebody into the school, and get them moving forward. And that's just a start. There's lots of ways to create training, motivation to push your instructors towards that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not just financial. I mean, there's nothing that may be the way to get the instructors to buy in early, but at the back end, there's nothing that makes you feel better than a student or a customer that has really felt good about the whole process.
Yeah.
Well, nice job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Dad. Did you
Thank you
have
very much, Josh.
No. Okay. Well, thank you, Josh.
So I'm back.
Welcome back, Rick.
Yep. I will point out, just to go back to this one slide here, so we have this, remember, develop expectations for your instructors, motivate them to be better at customer relations. And part of that is by attending seminars or an NAFI professional development program. So obviously we had to get our plug in there too. Shameless plug. So I just wanted to make sure everybody realized that. There's 7 other programs so far that you can log on and take those classes.
And speaking of customer satisfaction, that's what it's about anyway. We're trying to make one of our goals is our primary goal is to help make better instructors, help the industry by making better instructors. And uh, part of the satisfaction for you guys is, are we doing our job? Are we putting it out there? So with that, are there any questions?
Yeah, I know we have a little bit of a delay, so as we kind of wait, go ahead and type in your questions in the chat window. And if you're viewing on live stream, there's a place on the right side of your screen to do that. And we have people that are monitoring. Um,
Well, while we're waiting, Rick, did you notice that there was a common theme that both Chris and Josh had, and it was customer satisfaction over and over and over again. I think that's really something that's a little foreign to us. I think we think very much in terms of angle of attack and flying the airplane rather than what's going on with the customer. Is that a fair statement?
yeah, absolutely. It's something that we definitely need to keep addressing.
Yeah. And it's hard to remember for all of you that are watching tonight, and for those of you later, uh, when you look at this, it's hard to go back to when we first started and remember how tough it was. Somebody once said, aviation is the hardest thing in the world to teach and the easiest thing in the world to do. And I think that's true. I think once we get to our level or beyond in flying, we tend to forget the struggles, the difficulties, uh, how hard it was to learn how to make that perfect landing. Well, I've never had a perfect landing, but anyway, how to make that great landing, how to do a maneuver properly, and so on. So we have to
Yeah.
sit back and think about what the customer is looking for and what they expect of us on the way to that point.
So we did have a question here. Has NAFI considered providing materials to help CFIs bring back customers? Well, obviously, this is step one of part of that process. We will have a top 10 sheet that will be available. And obviously, if you're on this and hopefully you take the survey afterwards, we'll have your contact info and make sure we get that material for you. But obviously, it's a difficult process, and part of it is breaking your personal barriers and reaching out and talking to these people, and that's really the best way to do it.
Yeah, you have to be willing to be a little vulnerable.
Mhm.
You were-
I had actually had a text message come in from another person that was listening, and they said, "Do we use any sort of CRM system? Okay, customer relationship management system." Um, there's a couple different ones you can use. I personally use HubSpot. I mean, not to boast any differences, but there's tons of ones out there. Base, Salesforce. Basically, just find a system that works for you. The advantage of systems like that is it really helps you stay on top of things. And I myself am a little bit disorganized, I'll admit. And when you get that reminder to say, "Hey, you haven't talked to this guy in 3 days. Why don't you reach out to him?" Sometimes that's just that difference that you need to give excellent customer service. So definitely look out into systems like that. If you don't, I mean, I know there's a number of free ones. That HubSpot one happens to be free, but definitely whatever it is, pick one and use it and learn everything you can to use it well.
Customer satisfaction surveys, CRM, so on, are important. The other thing I would recommend to all of you is during the debrief, we tend to debrief the student and point out what they did well and what could use improving. They're paying a fair amount of money for this. Ask them what they think and make sure they understand it's not a pat the instructor on the back question. It's a what could I have done better?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a question come in, and this is great. And I'm gonna pull Chris in on this. And so why don't you stay on, Bob, and Chris, you and Chris can talk. But they say, what are you guys doing for lead generation in your area? let me tell you something. One of the best things that I did for lead generation, and not to plug anybody's programs, was the Rusty Pilot program. So I'm going to jump off here real quick. Chris, why don't you jump back on and talk a little bit about how Rusty Pilots can really help people?
Hi. So yeah, Rusty Pilots. It's like I'm hoping that most people are somewhat familiar with that, but if you're not, basically it's a program that we have that we will, if you are willing to host one, we will send a presenter to you, and it's designed to bring in exactly what this whole seminar was about, which is to bring in pilots who have dropped out for whatever reason. I know myself, I was a Rusty Pilot for a number of years, and so it's anywhere from someone that's, just out of currency from 2 years out of flight review, to, we've had people up to 30 years and 40 years that want to get back into training. So what we'll do, if you go to rustypilots.org, you can read more about it, and you can apply on there. But the really cool thing about it is if you host one, we will help you out. AOPA will send out email marketing in your area, and letting people know. What we do is we have a database that shows people that have let their medicals expire but are certificated pilots. We will hit them through the FAA or through our email database, and then using some the medical information from the FAA. And basically, what we'll do is we will send those emails out. And what happens is we, on average, have, I think the average right now, I want to say, is 37, somewhere in that range. So it's in the 30s that schools or places that host these will have 30 some new people come through on average their doors to attend the Rusty Pilot seminar. And it's a great way to get two things. Number one, you're getting pilots that are already certificated. So it's kind of that low hanging fruit in the sense of you just got to get them back in the flight review. And the other part is you're getting brand new customers in, people that have dropped out for whatever reason. You're bringing them back in, and you already know that these people are engaged. They love flying, and getting them out, showing them your planes and your school is a great way to get them hooked back in.
A lot of times it's the inertia of getting them back in the door, getting past that little hump. Could you give that website again one more time for people who can have a chance to get it?
Absolutely. That's rustypilots.org. If you also go onto the AOPA site, you should be able to find it. But I always tell people just www.rustypilots.org, and I'll get you right there. And it's even got a section there for hosting one. I'll look for that on the left side rail.
Yep, I've done it a couple of times, and it's a great program.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks, Chris. So while Rick's coming back, there's a great question here. When trying to sell instruction to students, how do you change your approach to take into account generational differences?
Yeah, that is a tough question. And there's a number of articles out there. And that's probably something we can even do an entire program on, because of the different generational differences and how those generations learn, and the fact that, we have generation Z now, or whatever they're, the millennials. And I can't keep up with the terminology, but how they're in front of these things right all the time. So they learn completely different than individuals like myself and like Bob. Even Bob and myself, we have generational differences on how we learn. So
But
we'll look into that, and I think we could probably do quite a bit on that subject.
I think it's a great topic. But one thing I will say is that regardless of generational differences or the things that have changed between generations, yes, I remember black and white TV as being a thing. The At the end of the day, people still want to be satisfied with their experience, no matter what generation they are. Now, how you do that might vary from generation to generation, but it's interesting. I found people, and you can all look and see the color of my hair, and I found people that in some ways, young people younger than me, that in some ways are, I don't want to say older because that implies something here, but an outlook where their goals are surprisingly mature to a guy like me, and that's not a put down of anybody. It's just, wow, that's your priorities. That's different than I would have expected from my worldview.
Yeah, absolutely. I will add, on the previous thing, one way to generate leads. I had a lot of success doing talks at public libraries. It's free. All you have to do, call up your local librarian. They are still out there. Trust me, there are still books on the shelves. And just schedule some time, and it reaches out to the community. You reach out into like park district files, things like that you wouldn't normally target. So that's another good thing to look into. Here's another good question: how often is too often in reaching out to follow up? That's a great question, because people that reach out too often to me, I shut down, and I'm just just leave me alone after a while. This is my recommendation. Start out, if you get a no after the first time, ask them, would you like a follow-up call? If you get if you get a no out of them, then scratch them off the list. It's okay. Your efforts are better targeted at somebody that might be willing to. If they say call them back, give them a week. Okay. If they're still busy after that, double it. Give them 2 weeks. And double that, then to give them 4 weeks. So, if you keep getting, yeah, I'm still busy, I got some other stuff going on. Just don't do it too much. You will get to the point, you'll figure out whether they're truly interested or not.
Yeah. And if they say that maybe if they say, well, yeah, I'm not sure, something like that, ask them, put it on them. When would be a good time to call back? That's a
Right.
good time.
Absolutely. It's asking what they're to come back. And Chris just added on here, if they're willing, it could be to keep them on the list of articles, to keep their mind. Oh, that's a 0 hours. So we have a couple different questions here. The one is, he's a new student with 0 hours, or she. And how do I find an instructor that's not just looking for a buck or just building time, that's going to actually have my best interest at heart? I'm in Dallas, by the way. There's a couple different things out there. And in the future, NAFI is looking at developing some programs that'll help you find instructors better. But one of the best things that you could do is go to nafinet.org, click on our Find a NAFI Instructor, and start there. A lot of times you'll find, especially if they have higher ratings, they're master instructors, they're gold seal or whatever, they may not be doing primary training, but those individuals pretty much know where the good schools are, and which ones to kind of stay away from. So if that is truly the case, that's my recommendation. Start at nafinet.org, click on Find a NAFI Instructor, and then seek out those senior instructors for their opinions. And who knows? Sometimes they do take primary students like Bob, and they'll be able to help you.
One other thing to consider is interview the instructor. A lot of newbies walk into the FBO or wherever and say, I'd like to learn how to fly. And they get paired up with somebody. And typically the scheduler at the desk, with good intention, says, well, so-and-so's got some time on their schedule. They need some students, and they put you together. And it goes back to what I said before. Sometimes two good people don't belong in the same small room together. And so interview your instructors, find out who you're comfortable with, talk to them, see if there's a rapport, there's any kind of spark. That's number one. And number two, I don't want to be argumentative here, but I have nothing against, quote, time builders, unquote, as long as while they're working towards the corporate or airline job that they seek, as long as they realize that they're here now and are providing good customer service. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being aspirational as a flight instructor. I encourage it. It's a great way into the industry. But while they're here, they need to be here, and they need to be teaching to the best of their ability, because they owe it to their customers. Interview that instructor. Find out what their commitment is to the student, to the customer.
Yeah, and part of that is watching our programs. We're really trying to target instructors in that area, as well as student pilots, professional instructors, all of that. But definitely those individuals that are wanting to go to the airlines, there's nothing wrong with that. You need your time too, but do the very best job you can and use the tools that we have here in the professional development program to help you out with that. With that, Bob, I think we're kind of at the end of the time here.
I think you're right. We're a little over, as a matter of fact, but that's okay. It was a great discussion. So We really appreciate your time. You're spending the evening here, and as I always say, it's always great to go out and fly, teach well, be safe, and enjoy flying. And be sure to share your enjoyment with your students. That's a big thing. That goes a long way. So, Rick,
Yep.
thanks for tonight.
Thanks, Bob, and get out there on Saturday, make those phone calls, and let's get people back into aviation. Thanks
Yep.
again. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.